Monica used to be the general manager of a pretty big hotel in Prague a few years ago. In her fantastic book, Put Your People First, she tells the story of her Mr. Anderson, not his real name, who stayed in her hotel for 5 days, all the time being pretty rude to the staff. Now, the day before he's due to check out, he goes up to the front desk and claims that he's lost his parking ticket. Can he have a new one, please? The staff have been talking about this jerk, and they knew very well that he actually has 2 cars in the hotel's paid parking lot. It seems like he's trying to weasel out of paying for parking. So the receptionist tells him that she can give him a new parking ticket, but it's going to cost him a fee that's actually more than the parking for the 5 days. This, by the way, is clearly stated in the hotel rules and right on the parking ticket itself. Mr. Anderson does not like that. In classic angry customer fashion, he starts yelling at the receptionist. That doesn't work. She sticks to her guns. Wanna guess what he does next? If you guessed, like a true Karen, he demands to see the manager, you'd be exactly right. Monica meets with him and hears his demand for a free parking ticket. He also makes a classic threat. Give me what I want, or I'm writing a bad review on TripAdvisor. The phrase, the customer is always right, has been around for over 100 years. As far as I can tell, it was originally coined in 1909 by Harry Gordon Selfridge, the founder of the Selfridges department stores in London. Now, faced with a customer like that, it must be incredibly tempting for any manager to say, the customer is always right, and just give him what he wants. But in this video, I'm going to argue that that is a huge mistake and that businesses need to abandon this maxim once and for all. Ironically, because it actually leads to worse customer service and it hurts the employees and the bottom line. Here are 5 reasons why the customer is always right is wrong. Number 1, some customers are just plain wrong. I mean, semantically, the customer is always right just cannot be true. Read at face value, it makes no exceptions whatsoever, which would logically have to mean that every single customer is right about every single demand. That is clearly not right. Mr. Anderson in the hotel in Prague was absolutely wrong. Some people argue that it's not meant to be taken literally. It just means that you should treat every customer with respect. But then why not just say that if that's what you mean? The problem with using the phrase, the customer is always right, is that it has made its way into the common vernacular. Everyone has heard it, so any angry customer can use it to justify any unreasonable demand. And if you still believe that the customer is always right, just think about some of the insane behavior we've seen in the last year and a half from customers who refuse to follow COVID regulations, for instance. Like a middle-aged man screaming at and spitting on a teenage Starbucks employee because she told him to wear a mask for 2 minutes while getting coffee. Was he right? No, he wasn't. The customer is not always right. It's just not true. Second reason, it hurts employees. Imagine for a second that you're a customer service employee somewhere, right? You've been trained in the rules and told to follow them. Then one day an angry customer gets in your face about some demand that you know they're not entitled to. So, of course, you do your job like a good employee. You politely explain the rules and you tell them, no, you can't have that. The customer, of course, demands to see your manager, who then instantly rolls over and gives them whatever they want. What would that feel like? Now imagine that it happens not only once, but regularly, every time you try to enforce the rules against a rude customer making unreasonable demands. They ask for a manager who immediately caves to their insane demands. How would that affect you over time? If you read online forums where customer service employees vent, like for instance the Tales from Retail subreddit, you'll see stories like this over and over. And most employees report that it leaves them feeling frustrated, angry, demotivated, and worst of all, betrayed. Why is that? Why do we even care? Well, it seems that our brains make us care. Scientists have found that our brains seem wired to like fairness and morality. Studies indicate a neuromoral network for responding to moral dilemmas centered in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex and its connections, particularly on the right. The neurobiological evidence indicates the existence of automatic pro-social mechanisms for identification with others that are part of the moral brain. Simply put, being treated unfairly yourself or seeing others get ahead by cheating feels bad. It lights up the brain in much the same way that physical pain does. Seeing a rude customer gain an unfair advantage by acting out is a textbook example of that. It sucks. Herb Kelleher, the former CEO of Southwest Airlines, said essentially the same thing. Herb Kelleher makes it clear that his employees come first, even if it means dismissing customers. But aren't customers always right? No, they are not, Kelleher snaps. And I think that's one of the biggest betrayals of employees a boss can possibly commit. The customer is sometimes wrong. We don't carry those sorts of customers. We write to them and say, fly somebody else. Do not abuse our people. One of the biggest betrayals of employees a boss can possibly commit. There's even a slightly scary research finding that shows that we value not only fairness, but also revenge. A participant in an MRI scanner, a brain scanner, was playing a game in which they saw their opponent cheat them and get away with it. Now, later in the experiment, they saw the cheater receive an electric shock. All fake, not real. And this caused activation in the pleasure center of the brain of male test subjects. Apparently, seeing cheaters get punished feels really good, which explains the existence of subreddits like Just Deserved and Instant Karma, which are dedicated to people who get their comeuppance. The third reason why the customer is always right is wrong is that it gives bad customers an unfair advantage. Using this slogan, abusive customers can demand just about anything. They're right by definition, aren't they? This makes the employee's job that much harder when trying to rein them in. It also means that abusive customers get better treatment than nice customers. That always seemed dumb to me. It makes much more sense to be nice to the nice people to keep them coming back. It also means that we train the worst customers to make insane demands, which will then be met. Basically, giving in to a Karen teaches them to repeat the same behavior in the future in your business. Is that what you want? 4. Some customers are actually bad for business. According to the fantastic book Nuts, there was one woman who frequently flew on Southwest, but was always disappointed with all of it. After every flight, she'd write in a letter with a complaint. Finally, one of those letters ends up on Herb Kelleher's desk, the CEO, and in 60 seconds, he writes back to say, "Dear Mrs. Smith, we will miss you. Love, Herb." A company can and should fire bad customers. They're just not worth it, and they will cost you money in the long run. Letting bad customers run rampant can chase away your best employees, which is also bad for business. Hiring and training new people costs a ton of money and time. It is easier and cheaper to replace a customer than it is to replace an employee who quits because they just can't stand feeling betrayed over and over again. I also want to say that this is not just about a simple financial calculus, whether the company will make or lose money on that bad customer in the long run. It is also a simple matter of respect and dignity and of not tolerating customers who mistreat employees. Finally, reason number 5 is that the customer is always right. Saying that actually results in worse customer service over time. Hal Rosenbluth wrote an excellent book called Put the Customer Second, where he argues that when a company puts the employees first, they put the customer first. On the other hand, when management consistently sides with the worst customers instead of with employees, it sends a clear message that employees are not valued and must put up with everything the customers choose to dish out or risk losing their jobs. When this attitude prevails, employees stop caring about service. At that point, genuinely good customer service becomes impossible. The best customers can hope for is like fake good service. You know the kind I mean? That's mechanical, lifeless, and courteous on the surface only. On the other hand, studies show that employees who are happy at work give better customer service. And there is also a direct correlation between employee happiness and store profitability in retail companies. That's why no company can afford to sacrifice the mental well-being of its employees under the tired old excuse that the customer is always right. So here's the conclusion, and here's what happened with Monica and Mr. Anderson. By the way, please like and subscribe, and most of all, I'd love it if you comment with a time from your work where an angry customer either got what they wanted or was sent packing, and how either of those affected you. Monica met with Mr. Anderson, who also started yelling at her. He criticized the front desk staffer who had denied his request and threatened to leave a bad review on TripAdvisor. It would have been so easy to give in right then, but Monica is better than that. She calmly informs him that 1. She agrees with her employee. 2. He would have to pay for parking for both cars. 3. She loves responding to bad reviews on TripAdvisor to give future hotel guests the full story. And 4. That if he kept mistreating her staff, he should pack his bags and check out today instead of tomorrow as scheduled. Mr. Anderson quickly deflated and even ended up apologizing to the receptionist. That phrase, "the customer's always right," needs to go. If nothing else I've said today convinces you, imagine this. Imagine how awful it must feel to be the employee who was berated and belittled by a jerk customer for doing their job and following the rules, only to see a manager instantly cave and give that customer everything they asked for. Imagine the smug satisfaction that customer must feel, knowing that their terrible behavior paid off again. On the other hand, try to imagine how good it would feel to see the look of astonishment on that customer's face when a manager actually stands up for their employees and all of their petulance and tantrums come to nothing. If you agree that the first one would suck and that last one would feel pretty amazing, then you must also automatically agree that the customer is always right is wrong. Stay happy.